Allow me to tell you a story. Some stories are born from imagination. Others feel so real that, even years later, people still argue about what truly happened. Whether this story is fact or fiction, I'll leave that for you to decide. All I ask is that you stay with me until the very end. It was a quiet Sunday morning. The first light of autumn filled the countryside outside my window. The air was cool. The trees were beginning to change color. My husband David had already left before sunrise. He loved fishing. Whenever he had a free Sunday, he would drive to the lake before anyone else was awake. I stayed in bed for a few more minutes, thinking I might ride my bicycle to meet him later. Then, my phone rang. The screen showed my brother's name, Michael. He never called that early. The moment I answered, I knew something was wrong. Emily? His voice sounded tense. Is Dad with you? I sat upright. What? Is Dad at your house? No. Why would he be? There was a long pause. I can't find him. A chill ran through my body. What do you mean you can't find him? He disappeared. I thought he was sleeping in his room. But this morning, he was gone. My heart started racing. Dad wouldn't just leave. I know. I checked everywhere. The yard, the garage, the neighborhood. His phone is still here. He didn't take anything. I threw the blanket aside and stood up. When was the last time you saw him? Yesterday afternoon. He was sitting on the back porch while Jennifer and I went shopping. When we got home, I assumed he was resting. I never checked. His voice became quieter. This morning, Jacob told me Grandpa wasn't in the house. And now, I have no idea where he is. I walked toward the window. Outside, the world looked peaceful. Inside, my stomach was in knots. An awful thought crossed my mind. A 70-year-old man, alone, without telling anyone where he was going. This wasn't like my father. Not at all. I looked at the family photo sitting beside the window. Dad was smiling in it. The same warm smile he always had. Even after losing Mom. I swallowed hard. Michael, we need to call the police. Silence. Then my brother said something that I never expected to hear. The silence on the other end of the phone lasted several seconds. Then Michael sighed. Go ahead and call the police. I'm not wasting my Sunday looking for him. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. What? He'll turn up. He always does. I felt my hands tighten around the phone. Michael. He's 70 years old. He lost Mom 2 years ago. What if something happened to him? What if he's hurt? My brother let out an impatient breath. You worry too much. Jennifer thinks he probably stayed at your house. I closed my eyes. No, he wasn't here. And you know Dad would never disappear without telling someone. Another silence. Then Michael muttered, ever since he retired, he's been lost. He doesn't know what to do with himself anymore. He should have stayed in Germany. At those words, something inside me snapped. That's not fair. He came home because this was the house he spent his entire life building. He believed we'd all be together. He believed he wouldn't grow old alone. Michael didn't answer, so I continued. He worked his entire life for us. He gave us everything. And now we're acting like he's a burden. His voice suddenly became cold. So what do you want me to do? I have my own family, my own problems. I can't spend every minute worrying about Dad. I could feel tears filling my eyes. I'm not asking you to spend every minute. I'm asking you to care. For a moment, I thought he might say something. Instead, he ended the call. I stood there, staring at the silent phone. Deep down, I knew my brother didn't truly hate our father. He was frustrated, tired, but that didn't make his words hurt any less. I grabbed my jacket and my car keys. If Dad really was missing, I wasn't going to sit at home waiting for someone else to find him, because something told me this wasn't an ordinary disappearance. Something had pushed my father to walk away, and I was terrified that we might already be too late. As I drove toward my brother's house, memories flooded my mind. Michael and I grew up in a small town in Iowa. It wasn't a wealthy place, but it was home. Our father, John, worked construction for over 40 years. He left before sunrise. He came home exhausted, but he never complained. Our mother, Margaret, worked at a local diner. She spent long days on her feet. Together, they sacrificed everything to give us a better life. They rarely bought anything for themselves. Dad drove the same old pickup truck for nearly 20 years. Mum wore the same winter coat until it was falling apart. But when it came to Michael and me, they never said no to what truly mattered. Dad loved spending weekends with us. Fishing, camping, long drives through the countryside. He always said, money can build a house, but love is what makes it a home. Those words stayed with me. Years later, Michael married Jennifer. Dad had spent years building a beautiful family home on a few acres of land. Michael and Jennifer moved in. Dad was proud. He believed the house would stay full of family for generations. A few years later, one married David. We bought a small house only 20 minutes away. Life felt simple, peaceful, complete. Then, everything changed. Mom was diagnosed with cancer. She fought as hard as she could, but 2 years later, we buried her. Dad was never the same again. He retired soon after. He told us he didn't need much, just one room, and the chance to be close to my children. None of us realized it then, that losing Mom had broken something deep inside him, and without meaning to, Michael and I were about to break what little he had left. After Mum's funeral, Dad stayed alone in the family house for a while. At first, he tried to keep busy. He mowed the lawn, fixed broken fences, worked in the garage, but the house was too quiet. Every room reminded him of Mom. One evening, he invited Michael and me over. I've been thinking, he said. I don't want to live here alone anymore. I'd rather be close to my children. His words broke my heart. Michael looked at Jennifer. She didn't say anything, not at first. Then she forced a smile. Of course, John. Your family. You'll always have a place here. Dad smiled. For the first time in weeks, I saw a little hope in his eyes. But it didn't last. A few days later, Jennifer called us. I've been thinking, she said. It isn't really fair if your father lives here all the time. I frowned. What do you mean? You should help too. He's your father. So here's my idea. He spends 1 month here, and 1 month at your house. The room fell silent. I looked at Dad. He didn't argue. He didn't complain. He simply lowered his head. Then he quietly said, if that's easier for everyone, I'm okay with it. David looked at me. Neither of us liked the idea, but we didn't want another family argument. So we agreed. Looking back now, I wish I had spoken up, because from that moment on, my father stopped feeling like part of our family. He became a visitor. Every 30 days, he packed the same small suitcase and waited for someone to drive him to his next home. At first, Dad tried to make the arrangement work. Every month, he packed the same small suitcase, a few shirts, a sweater, his Bible, a family photo of Mom. Then he waited. When it was time to leave one house, someone drove him to the other. No one asked him what he wanted. No one asked how he felt. We simply assumed he would adjust, and he did. Or at least, he pretended to. Whenever he stayed with us, David took him fishing. The two of them could spend hours sitting by the lake without saying much. Sometimes, silence was enough. Dad smiled more when he was with David. They talked about old trucks. Baseball, the weather, simple things. I noticed he laughed again. Not often, but enough to give me hope. At Michael's house, it was different. Jennifer barely spoke to him. Most days, she acted as if he wasn't even there. If Dad offered to help around the house, she always had the same answer. No thanks. I've got it. After a while, he stopped offering. The only person who truly looked forward to seeing him was my nephew, Jacob. Jacob loved working on cars. Dad had spent years repairing engines as a hobby. The two of them could spend an entire afternoon in the garage, greasy hands, old country music playing on the radio, talking about engines and life. My daughter Olivia loved Grandpa too. She patiently taught him how to use a computer, how to send emails, how to search the internet. Sometimes they laughed for hours when he accidentally clicked the wrong button. Those were the moments when he looked like the father I remembered. But as the months passed, those moments became fewer. Jacob started working longer hours. Olivia became busy with high school. Life moved on. Everyone had somewhere to be, something to do. Everyone. Except Dad. Looking back now, I realize something that still breaks my heart. He wasn't lonely because he was old. He was lonely because the people he loved were too busy to notice he was slowly disappearing. 2 years passed. The routine never changed. 1 month at Michael's house, 1 month at mine. The same suitcase, the same drive, the same forced smile. Dad never complained. Not once. But he wasn't the same man anymore. The father who used to fill every room with laughter had grown quiet. He no longer sang while making breakfast. He no longer whistled in the garden. Most evenings, he simply sat outside, watching the sunset, thinking about Mom. Sometimes I sat beside him. Neither of us spoke. I thought he needed silence. Now I realize he probably needed someone who would simply listen. One afternoon, Olivia called me into her room. "Mom, I want to show you something." She opened Grandpa's folder on her computer. Over the past year, she had taught him how to type, how to save documents, how to write down his memories. He said he wanted me to have these someday. I smiled. Then I started reading. There were dozens of pages. Short stories, family memories, little life lessons, things he had never said out loud. Comma. One sentence stopped me cold. No one grows old because of age. We grow old when we stop feeling needed. I stared at the screen. Then another. Children never realize how lonely a parent can become until they become parents themselves. I felt a lump in my throat. How had I never noticed? How had I never asked him how he was really feeling? That evening, Dad packed his suitcase again. The next morning, Michael came to pick him up. Before leaving, Dad hugged Olivia. Then he hugged me. He held me a little longer than usual. "I'll see you next month," he said with a smile. I smiled back. "I'll be waiting." I watched his car disappear down the road. For some reason, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. A week later, my father vanished without a trace. The moment Dad disappeared, everything changed. Within an hour, the local sheriff's office had started searching. Neighbors joined the search. Volunteers walked through nearby woods. Others searched along the lake. Every passing hour made me more afraid. I couldn't stop imagining the worst. What if he had fallen? What if he had suffered a heart attack? What if he was lying somewhere, waiting for someone to find him? I barely slept. Neither did David. Late that night, I sat at the kitchen table with Olivia. She quietly opened Grandpa's folder on her laptop. Maybe he left us a clue. For hours, we read through everything he had written. Most of it was filled with memories. Stories from our childhood. Advice for Olivia. Little lessons about kindness. Then, she stopped scrolling. "Mum, I found something." She turned the screen toward me. It wasn't a story. It was just one sentence. Life always moves forward, even when the people you love leave you behind. I felt tears filling my eyes. A few lines later, another sentence appeared. Sometimes the hardest part of growing old isn't losing your strength. It's realizing you've become an inconvenience. I couldn't breathe. Every word felt like a knife. Had he really felt that way? Had we done this to him? I buried my face in my hands. I should have talked to him. I should have listened. Olivia wrapped her arms around me. "It isn't your fault, Mom." But deep inside, I wasn't so sure. 5 long days passed. Still, there was no sign of Dad. Then, early Friday morning, my phone rang. It was the sheriff. "We found your father." For one brief second, I couldn't even speak. "Is he I couldn't finish the question. The sheriff answered gently. He's alive. He checked himself into a retirement community nearly a week ago. He never wanted to disappear. He simply didn't want to be anyone's burden anymore. I closed my eyes. The relief was overwhelming, but it was quickly replaced by something far heavier: shame. The retirement community was nearly 2 hours away. The drive felt much longer. No one spoke. Michael kept his eyes on the road. For the first time in years, my brother had nothing to say. When we finally arrived, I stopped in my tracks. This wasn't what I had expected. It didn't look like a nursing home. It looked like a peaceful country resort. Beautiful gardens surrounded the buildings. People sat on benches laughing together. Others played chess beneath large oak trees. A group of residents was walking along a small lake. There was life everywhere, not loneliness. A smiling receptionist greeted us. "You must be John's family." I nodded. "How is he?" "He's doing well. He asked us not to tell anyone he was here. But once the police became involved, we had no choice." She led us down a quiet hallway. Then she stopped in front of a door. Before knocking, she smiled. "I think you'll be happy to see him." When the door opened, I froze. Dad was sitting on the balcony. A cup of coffee rested beside him. He looked peaceful, healthier than he had in months. He slowly turned toward us. For a moment, no one spoke. Then he smiled. I wasn't expecting visitors so soon. I rushed forward and hugged him. Tears streamed down my face. "Dad, we've been so worried." He gently held my shoulders. "I know. I'm sorry. I never wanted to frighten you. I simply needed a place where I didn't feel like I was being passed from one house to another." Those words shattered my heart. Michael looked away, unable to meet Dad's eyes. Dad smiled sadly. "I don't blame either of you. You both have families. You have your own lives. I just realized I no longer had a place in them." Silence filled the room. None of us knew what to say, because deep down, every word he spoke was true. Just then, someone knocked gently on the open door. An elegant woman stepped inside. She looked to be around Dad's age. She smiled warmly the moment she saw him. "Oh, I didn't realize you had visitors." Dad smiled back. "It's all right. Come in." Then he turned toward us. "Emily? Michael, I'd like you to meet Evelyn." She gave us a friendly smile. "It's so nice to finally meet you. I've heard a lot about both of you." I shook her hand. "You know our father?" She laughed softly. "We've become very good friends. We usually have breakfast together. Then we take a walk around the gardens, if the weather is nice. John almost always beats me at chess." Dad smiled for the first time in what felt like years. Seeing that smile hurt more than I expected. When was the last time I had made him smile like that? Evelyn looked at him with kindness. "I'll let you spend some time with your family. We can take our walk later." Before leaving, she gently touched Dad's shoulder. "I'll see you this afternoon." He nodded. "I'll be waiting." After she left, I looked at Dad. "You seem happy here." He leaned back in his chair. "I am. There are people here who actually have time to talk. We eat together. We laugh together. No one feels forgotten." He looked out across the gardens. "Do you know what loneliness really is? It's not living alone. It's living in a house full of people who no longer have time for you." His words hung in the air. No one moved. No one spoke. Then Michael finally broke the silence. "Dad, I'm sorry. I should have done better." Dad looked at him for a long moment. Then he smiled gently. "We all make mistakes, son. The important thing is whether we learn from them before it's too late." For several minutes, we talked about ordinary things. The weather, the gardens, the food. No one wanted to mention the real reason we had come. Then, Michael finally cleared his throat. "Dad, there is something we should probably discuss." Dad looked at him calmly. "What is it?" Michael shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "The house." The room fell silent. "I've invested a lot of money into it. I've remodeled almost everything. I just think it would be easier if we settled the ownership now. I stared at my brother. I couldn't believe he was bringing this up. Not now. Not here. Dad didn't get angry. He simply looked at Michael for a long moment. Then he quietly smiled. So? That's why you came? Michael looked away. I just don't want any confusion later. Dad nodded slowly. I understand. He folded his hands on the table. The house is still legally mine. When I'm gone, everything will be handled according to my will. Michael's face tightened. You already made a will? Yes, a long time ago. He looked directly at both of us. I've tried to be fair. I've tried to think about everyone. But I also had to think about something neither of you seemed to notice. He paused. My dignity. Neither Michael nor I spoke. Dad continued. I spent my whole life building that house. I imagined family dinners, holidays, grandchildren running through the yard. I never imagined that I would spend my final years living out of a suitcase. Every word landed like a stone in my chest. I don't blame either of you, but I won't pretend it didn't hurt. Michael lowered his head. For the first time that day, he had no argument, no excuse, only silence. And somehow, that silence said more than words ever could. Before we left, Evelyn returned. She smiled warmly as she saw us standing together. I hope I'm not interrupting. Dad smiled. Not at all. I was just showing them around. Evelyn looked at me. Would you like to take a short walk? I nodded. I'd like that. We stepped outside onto a quiet garden path lined with colorful autumn trees. For a while, we walked in silence. Then Evelyn spoke. You've been wondering why someone would choose to live here. I looked at her. I guess I have. She smiled gently. My husband passed away almost 10 years ago. My daughters both live across the country. They have wonderful families. They love me, but they have busy lives. She stopped beside a small pond. I could have lived with one of them. They both asked me, but I said no. I frowned. Why? Because I didn't want them to feel responsible for me. She looked toward the lake. I wanted to stay their mother, not become another obligation on their calendar. Her words stayed with me. She smiled again. People think retirement communities are lonely places. They're not. The lonely place is the house where no one has time to sit down beside you. I felt tears filling my eyes. I wish I had understood that sooner. Evelyn gently touched my arm. Don't spend your life drowning in guilt. Learn from it. That's what your father wants. We slowly walked back toward Dad's apartment. Before we reached the door, I noticed him through the window. He was laughing. Really laughing. A chessboard sat between him and another resident. For a moment, he looked 20 years younger. That was the moment I finally understood. We hadn't lost Dad. We had simply failed to give him something every human being deserves. A place where they feel wanted. Life slowly settled into a new rhythm. We visited Dad almost every weekend. Sometimes just David and I. Sometimes Olivia came with us. Every visit felt different. Dad looked stronger, happier. He laughed more than he had in years. One Saturday afternoon, Olivia and I sat with him on the terrace. He smiled at his granddaughter. So, have you decided what you're going to study? Olivia nodded. I want to major in English literature and maybe become a teacher someday. Dad's eyes lit up. That's a wonderful dream. Olivia smiled, then looked down at her hands. The only problem is money. My parents are doing everything they can, but college isn't cheap. I felt embarrassed. I hadn't wanted Dad to worry about our finances. Before I could change the subject, he gently raised his hand. Don't worry. Olivia looked at him. I've been saving for a long time. I didn't spend my retirement on expensive vacations. I didn't spend it on luxury. I saved it for my family. He reached across the table and held Olivia's hand. When the time comes, I'll help pay for your education. Tears filled my eyes. Dad, you don't have to do that. He smiled. Yes, I do. I've always believed the greatest gift you can leave behind is opportunity. Olivia stood up and hugged him tightly. Thank you, Grandpa. I promise I'll make you proud. I already am. At that moment, Someone walked onto the terrace carrying 3 cups of coffee. It was Evelyn. She smiled as she placed 1 cup in front of Dad. "I thought you might need a refill." Dad looked at her and smiled the way only someone in love can smile. Olivia noticed it too. She leaned toward me and whispered, "Mom, I think Grandpa likes her." I smiled. I think she likes him too. For the first time since losing Mom, I saw something I never thought I would see again. Hope in my father's eyes. A few weeks later, an envelope arrived in our mailbox. It was addressed to David and me. Inside was a wedding invitation. I stared at it for several seconds. Then I smiled. Dad and Evelyn were getting married. A quiet ceremony, held at the retirement community, surrounded by the friends who had become their new family. When I showed the invitation to Olivia, she hugged me. "Grandpa deserves to be happy." I know, and I'm happy for him. But not everyone felt the same. That evening, Michael called me. The moment I answered, he was already shouting, "Did you get the invitation?" "Yes, I think it's wonderful." "Wonderful?" "Emily, have you lost your mind? Dad's getting married at 70. So? He deserves another chance at happiness." Michael laughed bitterly. "You don't get it. The moment he remarries, everything changes." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" "The house. If he leaves everything to her, what happens then?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Michael, are you seriously thinking about the house right now? What else am I supposed to think about? I've spent years fixing that place. I've invested thousands of dollars. I'm not about to lose it." His words made me sick. I remembered Dad's face, the sadness in his eyes, the lonely evenings, the small suitcase he carried every month. And suddenly, I understood something. Michael had spent years worrying about a house. Dad had spent those same years just hoping someone would ask him how he was doing. "Emily, are you even listening?" "Yes, I am. And for the first time, I think Dad finally made the right decision." Without waiting for an answer, I ended the call. Some people measure life by what they own, others by the people they love. For the first time, I finally understood the difference. Dad's wedding was beautiful, simple, peaceful. There were no expensive decorations, no grand ballroom, just family, friends, and people who truly cared about one another. For the first time in years, I saw genuine happiness in my father's eyes. He wasn't replacing Mom. No one ever could. He had simply found someone who understood what loneliness felt like. Someone who reminded him that life wasn't over. Not yet. A few months later, Jacob returned home after finishing his military service. At a family barbecue, he stood up and cleared his throat. "I have something to tell everyone." The backyard became quiet. "I'm getting married." Michael smiled at first, then Jacob continued, "And we're moving into the family house." The smile disappeared. Jennifer crossed her arms. "There isn't enough room." Jacob frowned. "What do you mean?" "This is my home too." Jennifer shook her head. "Not after you're married. You'll need to find your own place." Jacob stared at both of his parents. Then he asked quietly, "Whose house is this?" Michael answered immediately, "It's mine." Jacob slowly reached into his backpack. He pulled out a folder. "I don't think it is." He placed several papers on the table. "Dad gave me these." Michael picked them up. His face turned pale. Dad had legally transferred half of the property to Jacob on his 18th birthday. The other half would one day belong to him through his estate. "You wanted the house so badly." Jacob said quietly, "You forgot what Grandpa wanted. He never cared about the building. He cared about the family inside it." No one said a word. Michael simply stared at the papers. For the first time, he understood what greed had cost him. Not the house, his father's trust, his own son's respect. Months later, Dad and Evelyn came to visit us. As we sat together on the porch, watching the sunset, Dad smiled. "You know, I used to think growing old was something to fear. I was wrong. It's not age that hurts. It's feeling unwanted." He reached for Evelyn's hand. But if you're surrounded by kindness, every season of life can still be beautiful. I looked at my father, then at my husband, then at my daughter, and finally, at my brother. He looked older now, quieter, humbler. Maybe life had finally taught him the lesson our father never could. Because in the end, life has a way of balancing every account. Kindness returns, cruelty returns, love returns. Everything comes back, and sooner or later, the debt always comes due. The end. Before we say goodbye, what would you have done if you were in Emily's place? Do you think her father made the right decision? Or should parents always stay with their children, no matter what? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Every story has two sides, and every choice has consequences. If you enjoy heartfelt stories about family, love, regret, forgiveness, and the unexpected twists of life, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Until our next story, take care of the people who love you, because one day, the time you thought you had may be gone forever.